Lisa Fee, the Data for Good sector lead at Launch Consulting. This season, we're sticking a little closer to home, but thinking just as big, harnessing the power of data to create a better global community. This is Navigating Abroad. In this episode, I sit down with Joseph Ciccolo, the founder and president of BitAML, and a major player in the world of cryptocurrency. Drawing from his rich background in criminal justice and risk management, Joe conducts cryptocurrency training for federal, state, and local law enforcement, and advises fintech clients on virtual currency across the globe. Join us as we take the mystery out of crypto and talk the importance of compliance and regulation in the era of virtual finance. Joe, it's wonderful to see you here today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I would love to learn more about what you and your company do that maybe somebody who's not in the crypto industry would understand.
Sure. So we do regulatory compliance consulting for crypto companies. So our clients offer some sort of product or service or product or services in the cryptocurrency space, and we help them navigate the federal and state regulatory requirements, anti-money laundering, cybersecurity, consumer protection, and other areas of the risk management spectrum.
Okay, so all the things that we all are concerned about when we're dealing with money are the things that you make sure are set up properly in a business-to-business capacity?
Absolutely. So it is business-to-business, as you mentioned. We make sure that our clients understand and we're able to successfully navigate what those rules are, and ultimately that helps out the consumer to be in a marketplace where there are clear disclosures, notice of risk, and other elements that protect them and the integrity of the financial system.
And for people like me that are maybe newer to the crypto space, I know I hear things like wallets and NFTs and different types of coins. Can you just kind of give us a landscape of what kind of B2B companies exist in the crypto world that you help set up properly?
Sure. Most of our clients are offering some sort of retail exchange experience, meaning that individuals can buy and sell cryptocurrency using what we call fiat on-ramps, so ACH or wire or even cash in the case of Bitcoin ATMs. It's an opportunity for them to be able to purchase cryptocurrency or conversely sell their cryptocurrency for fiat. And in some cases, some of our clients facilitate crypto to crypto transactions, meaning one type of cryptocurrency can be exchanged or traded for another.
Okay. So for the trends that we see in the news right now, I feel like crypto's been having quite a year in terms of volatility. Can you help us understand what trends you're seeing as an industry insider and where you think we should all be paying more attention to?
Sure. I think there's a lot of attention right now on what's called DeFi or decentralized finance. And that's a unique area in that institutions are essentially being replaced with smart contracts, so automated interaction between different parties and not necessarily having a centralized institution. As you might imagine, that raises several questions from a regulatory compliance capacity. And we're seeing that bear out, unfortunately, with some pretty sad cases in the news of companies that have gone under and consumers that unfortunately have lost funds or don't have access to their funds, which we think is going to be a real point of regulatory emphasis coming up and sort of the broader consumer protection as well. But primarily, most of the institutions that are out there are offering some sort of way for retail investors to have access to and have exposure to crypto. Some of the more elaborate products and services where the industry is growing, that's where we're seeing a lot more regulatory attention as opposed to, again, these sort of retail type exchanges, which have been regulated and have gone through several exam cycles. And the industry and the regulators are much more comfortable and have a working dynamic. Anytime there's new innovation, there's new questions. And unfortunately, there are some sad stories that are playing out in the news, as you mentioned.
Yeah, so from a regulation standpoint, do you think we'll see more from a state level, a federal level, a global? Where should we be paying attention?
So all of the above.
Okay.
I think definitely at the global level, there's a lot of concentration on how do jurisdictions cooperate. So Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is non-national, transnational. It doesn't know any borders. Well, we have laws, customs, and controls that vary from country to country, region to region, and things that are very cultural as well. So they don't necessarily translate, if you pardon the pun, between one jurisdiction and the other. So there's a lot has to be worked out on a global scale. Nationally, I think we're going to see a lot more attention in terms of securities, commodities, and again, some of the more dynamic areas of cryptocurrency are going to get a lot more regulatory attention. At the state level, we're starting to see the states compete with one another. We see that here in California with Governor Newsom's executive order on cryptocurrency and wanting to make this a hub of innovation, as it already is, but further encourage that for cryptocurrency and balance that with the need to protect consumers as we ought to, but also making sure that the window of innovation is open and that we can encourage the best and brightest to participate in that space.
So innovation is always an open playing field for many to join. Unfortunately, sometimes criminals enter the competition a little bit faster than the broader public. Can you share a few examples of places where crypto has benefited society by using it in a responsible way? Because I know when I think about it from my background in human trafficking prevention, I think it can be a tool used to work around our traditional banking systems. Can you share some other examples of ways that it has benefited society?
Sure, yeah, you mentioned that the good guys and the bad guys enjoy the same benefits of cryptocurrency in that it can be transmitted virtually anywhere in the world where there's internet connectivity within a matter of minutes and sometimes seconds. So you can imagine that encourages both the good and the bad along with it. So darknet and ransomware, we hear a lot of attention about that in terms of methods of payment. But what we don't hear about, and we should hear about, in my opinion, more often, are developing countries that this is literally a lifeline for individuals, whether we're talking about the crisis in Ukraine, where Ukrainians don't have access to their banking system. Effectively, there's martial law or the equivalent of martial law, and they don't have access to their traditional bank accounts, something we take for granted here. Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies have become a readily accepted medium of exchange and a barter system. We're also seeing that play out in Venezuela and other countries that either don't have a constitution or are going through some sort of economic or social or governmental strife, where quite literally it's the difference between getting food on your table and not. When we think about it here in the US, we tend to think that crypto is something that afflicts sort of younger people and they're speculating and maybe it's the future of gold or other assets that maybe libertarians enjoy, when in fact it holds much more promise than that. And I think we should focus on its impact in the developing world as opposed to the developed world.
Yeah, when we had a chance to meet at a venture capital conference a few years back, I remember inviting you out for coffee and you helping me to see the bigger picture. And I'm glad that you can share that more with our viewers as well, because I must admit I had a bit of a bias against it. I think a lot of people know just enough to be dangerous about crypto, but not enough to recognize all the different ways that it can be usable. So I appreciate you demystifying it for us. So you have been working in this space for over 7 years now, which in the crypto world, I believe might make you an OG. So with that in mind, do you mind sharing with us what your why is for wanting to be in this space and how it's evolved over time?
Sure. My why is wanting to be there to help guide regulation and compliance and be part of the conversation. So if we really believe, as I do, in innovation in cryptocurrency and what it unlocks, particularly for the developing world, means we have to have good players in the space, good industry, good rulemaking that makes sense. Certainly not looking for a free pass or making it easy for innovation, but making it cogent, making it gel with innovation, but as well with protecting consumers. And I wanted to be a part of that conversation. I wanted to see that guided in so we can see this innovation forward, as opposed to having some sort of free-for-all or having sort of a strict, overly burdensome regulatory barriers to entry.
So 10 years ago, you were working on something else. Can you tell me a little bit about what your work looked like 10 years ago versus today?
Yeah, I was sitting in a cubicle in a bank office building, looking through potentially suspicious activity and reviewing transactions and monitoring bank accounts, looking for potential money laundering or other financial crimes. So a lot has changed since then, a lot more automation, a lot more AML and other compliance tools that were able to be deployed, and certainly cryptocurrency is at least commercially viable. It's been less than a decade, as you kind of alluded to. So much more of a difference working in a bank environment as opposed to where I am now, working with some of the edge cases and the early adopters in the cryptocurrency industry. So
what drew you towards entrepreneurship?
I think I found it by accident. I was drawn more towards cryptocurrency and the shaking landscape of financial services. Going back to sort of the financial crisis, and we started to really rethink, where money comes from and how we transact banking, and sort of cryptocurrency came along, and I began to get curious about that. Went down the rabbit hole, as we call it in the crypto space, and really discovered that this could be something. This could be the future. I wasn't swayed by some of the negative images of cryptocurrency and some of the bad stories early on. What I focused on is, does the technology work? And it does. And all we needed was more time. And with more time and more use, more and more folks would get involved in the space. And I knew that it would be something in the future. Clearly I didn't have a crystal ball, and I didn't know what we come into today here in 2022. But it's been an amazing journey, and I really have loved to have been a part of it.
You absolutely have been part of that history, including setting up companies that people are probably familiar with in terms of names. With that in mind, as an entrepreneur myself, I've learned way more from my failures than my successes. Do you mind sharing an example of a failure that you experienced and what you learned from that to help others avoid making the same mistakes?
Yeah, I think generally, sort of the biggest failure I look back on is wanting too much for my pre-plans to play out the way they did, and not accepting that being fired from a job, even at a younger age, or things not going out the way that you anticipated, several years back. Looking back on that, and rather than looking at that as a negative, looking at that as a positive. There's no way I could have predicted that I'd be doing compliance for cryptocurrency institutions, some of the largest in the world, here today. Something I could not have pictured years ago. But I think my failure to kind of not see that, but rather recognize that all those steps along the way were positive, even setbacks. And really, taking time to enjoy successes is something I really need to continue to work on and be positive and be happy that I've achieved certain milestones and know that, yes, the journey is continuing, but to also take time and smell the roses.
I can very much relate to that. It's devastating when things change happens to you versus you driving that change. I think it is part of the human condition. And so many times that something didn't work out that I felt was an injustice, or maybe I was hard set on something, it actually put me on the path towards something much better that I was much more suited for. Has that been your experience now?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, well, hopefully for our audience, as they're considering the big moves post-pandemic, they can keep that in mind as they're learning to embrace that change. So for folks that want to stay up on what you're working on and the evolving crypto landscape, do you mind sharing with them where they can keep up with you?
Sure. You can reach me by email at joe@bitaml, so joe@bitaml.com, or just hang on our website, bitaml.com. We have a blog post there. We're pretty prolific in our blog posting, sharing information about not just cryptocurrency regulation and compliance, but cryptocurrency more generally. Where's the industry going? How are we interacting with policymakers, and what you can learn and how you can learn more about the industry.
Well, I can say the effect that you have being co-located in the state capital of California, your experience in the industry, and your willingness to be somebody that educates the masses in this space really makes you stand out. And we're so thrilled that you're here to share your knowledge with us. I really encourage our listeners to go to your website and keep touch. You are my guru, and you're how I stay active in this space. And so I'm glad that we could share you with a broader landscape now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for
my
being
pleasure.
here.
My pleasure. Thank you.